The next person we have coming up is, I'm an only child, right? What they say? I was an only child eventually. I'm an only child, and if I ever had a sister, this would be the one I would want. And she has worked so hard in this industry, and sometimes she hasn't been recognized for the things she's done. The things that now I'm doing more teaching, the things that she's done that I applied blew my mind away, because even an old guy like me can read and do it, and she's come up with a terrific system. She's had some people pick on her lately, which just doesn't make any sense to me at all. And the things that she's been able to do, kind of with her carrying an anchor through that, has been spectacular. Now that's kind of going away, and everybody's starting to get behind her. And I think she's doing a lot of big things now, and I think she's going to be doing a lot more big things. So come on up here, little sis. Melody Shuman. And I swear to God, she can outdrink me. Look at the size of it. She can. It's amazing.
All right. Thank you so much, Randy. I used to always say he's my favorite drunk uncle, so I guess that he's my favorite drunk big brother. So really quickly, just by a show of hands, raise your hand if you haven't been to one of my presentations before. I kind of want to get a feel of the new people. Wow. Seriously, Andre? All right, well, if you don't know anything about me, I've been in the martial arts for 31 years. I started in martial arts in 1987 in New Orleans. I wasn't the prodigy of a kid who saw Karate Kid on TV and said, I have to do it. It was actually the exact opposite. Believe it or not, when I was younger, I was really small for my age. You can't tell because I'm in heels right now. But I used to get picked on a lot in school. I remember in 5th grade, the vivid memory of walking into my 5th grade class and the kids are going, who let the kindergartner in? And I was like, oh, there's a kindergartner in here? Didn't realize they were talking about me. So every day I would come home from school crying, and I would go to school crying because I knew I was going to get bullied. And my parents put me in martial arts to kind of help me cope with the negative behavior that I was displaying because I was being bullied so much. And I hated it. I hated martial arts. Hated standing next to these big sweaty guys with the yellow armpits in their traditional white uniforms. Got in trouble all the time. This was in the 1980s, so the dungeon dojo days. You know, I spent a lot of time in dead cockroach position. Does anybody know what that used to be? Where you lay in your feet and your hands up like you're a dead cockroach for a really long time. And it wasn't until I kicked a boy in the head really hard when we were sparring, and I saw my mom jump up and cheer. And I was like, wait a minute, you get to kick boys in the head? And people cheer you for it? Coolest sport ever. And through martial arts, because I started when I was 11, I started to learn how to cope with bullying. Because I don't believe that bullying is going away anytime soon. As a matter of fact, it's worse these days. Adults are bullying. People behind the keyboard. I'm getting bullied right now with a lot of untrue facts, and it's unfair, but I've learned how to cope with it because of martial arts. Except for when I moved to Florida when I was 14 years old, I was a freshman in high school, and let me backtrack for a second. Being in martial arts when I was 11, I started competing. I started winning. People would cheer me on. If I lost, they're like, oh, the poor little girl lost. But when I won, they're like, did you see that little girl win? That was awesome. So I was in the newspaper a lot, and I became really popular in school for martial arts, which was really neat. And it was neat because I didn't have very good parents. Well, I shouldn't say that. My father worked his butt off, so I never saw him. And my mother, as a child, had an alcoholic father, so she was abused. So she mentally abused my brother and I as we were children. So I didn't have a very good childhood. So martial arts became my place where I felt like I belonged. And that's where my passion started to grow. Except for when we moved to Florida, I was a freshman in high school, I started getting bullied for being in martial arts. So it's interesting how it worked. I started martial arts because I was getting bullied. I became popular. I moved to Florida. In high school back then, martial arts wasn't cool. Martial arts is cool now, thanks to Roland Osborne. I would give him a lot of credit for making martial arts cool. It's true. True story. Mackenzie Emery, Tyler Weaver, those guys are awesome, and they're making martial arts cool. But back then it wasn't cool, so I dropped out of martial arts and ended up getting a job working at Disney in entertainment and learned how to entertain kids, and that was a lot of fun. And then ended up as a choreographer on the Mickey Mouse Club and they wanted me to teach them martial arts back then. And so I got back into martial arts, and I started as a training at Sergio von Schmeling School, Master von Schmeling, when I was 19 years old. And one day he asked me to teach classes for kids, and I taught a kids class, and I applied some of the tactics that I learned working at Disney, and I have to pat myself on the back. It was one of the coolest classes ever. Even Master von Schmeling was like, that was amazing how you were able to entertain the kids while training them. It was edutainment. So I knew that that was going to be my life's work. Right then and there, when I started teaching those kids and seeing these kids smile and enjoy martial arts and what they were doing, I knew martial arts saved my life or helped me cope with bullying, and I wanted to do the same thing, so that became my life's work. So let's fast forward now and talk about the presentation today. Originally, I was going to talk about teaching skills and a lot of brain nerd stuff, but I asked a couple of people if you wanted to have a new topic, because this is something that isn't really touched on a lot in martial arts seminars, which is okay. But we know how to deploy a lot of really good teaching strategies working with kids. But one thing that we don't really have a lot of experience is working with the parents. And we all know we're great martial arts instructors, but how many of you also play the role as a therapist to the parents? Right? Parents come to you and say, my child did this at home, or can you help me with my child because his grades are falling? And they expect you, since you're a role model, to help these children. And sometimes we just don't have the experience or the education on what to say back to them, right? When parents say, well, my kid's not listening at home, what kind of strategies are you telling them? So what I did is, I'm a parent, proud parent of a son. His name is Van. If you don't know Van, he's a rock star on Facebook and Instagram. Just follow VanFix and you'll see all the pictures. He's 3 years old, and I knew when he was born that I wanted to be the parent that he needed me to be. I didn't want to use the excuse of being mentally abused as a child by my mother and being bullied as a child to then bully my son and carry on that generation of abusive parents. I wanted to be the exact opposite. I wanted to be the very best parent in the world. And it's interesting because I decided to create this content called Parent Skills for my skills members, and I'm going to share it with you today. And I came up with the 8 skills that you need as a parent to help your child become the best version of themselves possible. And the reason why I want to share this with you today is not only can you help parents now work with their children and be better parents, which positions you as an expert in your field, right? If you can give parents great parenting strategies and they go home and they apply them and they get results, they're going to tell their friends. And they're going to send their friends to your school. They're going to drive past every other martial arts school and come to you because now we're meeting those needs. So I created these parent skills, but as I'm creating them, I'm applying them at home with my son. And I just finished the 8th parent skill. And Jen Salama, she actually is the one editing them, so she gets to see them way in advance, so she knows that I'm applying these. And it's interesting because a year ago, I read this book called No Drama Discipline. Does anybody know who Daniel Siegel is? He wrote Whole Brain Child and No Drama Discipline. If you haven't read those books, they're amazing if you want to work, if you not only want to be a better parent, but you want to be a better children's martial arts instructor. And I listened to No Drama Discipline on the airplane on the way here, and I haven't listened to it in a year. And she was saying, you're not going to be the best parent all the time. You're not going to be the most patient parent all the time. And I was sitting there listening for the first time. I was like, yes, I am. I feel like I'm an amazing parent. So I'm very proud to share this content with you today. Just by a show of hands, raise your hand if you have a child. Great. Let's do it the opposite way. Raise your hand if you don't have a kid. All right. Hands. All right. Now, raise your hand, though, if you're an aunt or uncle to a child. Okay? Raise your hand if you plan on being a parent to a kid. Okay? And raise your hand if you work with children. Okay, so this content is relevant to the entire audience. So, let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead to the next slide. Next slide. Oh, okay, cool. So we had a photo shoot in December for our Christmas card. So all these pictures are of me and my partner and my son, Van. Just had to show these pictures because it tells my story. So the first skill is connection. And connection is something that parents are really missing these days. This is the number one problem that parents have when they come to you and they say, I have to tell my child 5 times to get ready for school, or 5 times to do their homework, or 5 times to come and get ready for dinner. Raise your hand if you've had that happen, or raise your hand if you've done that as a parent. You have to tell them. The first thing I ask the parent is, what's your level of connection when you're telling them to do that? So for me, for example, in the morning when Vin gets up, he has to have his iPad. He watches a little bit of YouTube Kids. We have a ritual every morning. And time again, I'd see Jill in the kitchen yelling to Van, hey, you want chocolate milk or apple juice? Van, take off your headphones. Van, will you listen to me? And on my mornings, I walk over to Van, and I get down, I rub his leg, and I open up his headphones and say, you want chocolate milk or apple juice? He's like, apple juice. So just that small level of connection makes a tremendous difference. So instead of saying, Van, okay, we got to get ready for school, Van and I have a ritual. 8 o'clock every morning, I write an adventure, a pre-made adventure that we do in his bedroom with his toys. Sometimes we use his dinosaurs, sometimes we use his superheroes, sometimes we use his Duplos, and we go on an adventure. Sometimes we're going to put out a fire in a hotel that we made, and we find his clothes for school. Then I get him ready for dress him. And then we go on a little bit more of an adventure, and I usually let him take over during that play, and then we find his toothbrush, and we brush his teeth. Then if we finish the adventure off when we find his shoes. We get his shoes on, and he goes to school. This level of connection makes a tremendous difference in my son's day. Because before I was deploying these strategies, it was, Van, we got to get ready for school, chasing him around the house, him crying, no, I don't want to go, Mommy, to now, where he goes to school, he feels like Superman. He feels like a rock star. Our connection is so powerful for his mindset for the entire day that he walks, he's got moxie when you see him walk. If you've ever seen him walk, he walks into school like this. This morning he walked in as Spider-Man with a Spider-Man mask on. Jill said it was awesome. She's like, followed some of your ritual, and it was amazing, the difference, the level of connection that we have. So my suggestion is when parents come to you and say, I have to tell my child to do 5 times to do his homework or 5 times to get ready, ask them, on a scale of 1 to 5, what's your level of connection with your child when you're telling them to do that? 1 or 2 means you're not really connected. 3 means maybe you're a little connected where you're looking him in the eyes. But 4 or 5 is where you get down on his level, look him in the eyes and touch him and rub him and say, hey, buddy, let's get you ready for school or time to do your homework. It's a powerful, powerful parenting skill. And if you ask the parents that, guarantee you 9 times out of 10, they're going to go, wow, you know what? I wasn't connected. I was in the kitchen yelling across the kitchen, telling my child to do his homework, telling my child to get ready. How powerful is just that one skill for you to have to deploy with your parents? Keep that in mind that it also applies to you as a martial arts instructor. What's your level of connection with your students before you start class? When I teach a class, the first thing I do is I go over to every single child and I say hi to them, give them a high five. I did it yesterday when we were in the seminar. I walked around and said hi. I wanted to build a connection with everybody. Connection is so powerful. And one of the reasons why is because, I'm going to get off track for a second here, but just bear with me because it's going to make a lot of sense. Does anybody understand what neurotransmitters are? Neurotransmitters are basically the battery for your brain. And there's 5 primary neurotransmitters that I study. The first one is cortisol. And cortisol is a negative transmitter. It's induced when you're stressed, when you're rushed, when you have a lot of anxiety. And cortisol is so bad for your system. It's bad for your immune system because it depletes your serotonin, which is a very important chemical that you need in your body. And that's why when you're stressed out, you get sick. So cortisol is something that I want to limit with my students, with my child, even with my partner. There's 4 really good neurotransmitters, and you can write these down. Just think of the word dose, like you're taking a dose of cough syrup. The first one is dopamine. And dopamine is the anticipation chemical. How much dopamine did you have in your brain the night before you came here to Cozumel, knowing that you were coming to Cozumel? Or how much dopamine did you have when you landed? It's a difference flying from Florida to Houston and then Houston to Cozumel. When we landed in Cozumel, who was on our flight? Shannon, you were on the flight. They were like, okay, welcome to Cozumel, where it's 1 o'clock. Oh, it doesn't even matter. You're in Cozumel, right? The dopamine that you had in your excitement, right, in your brain. So the same concept in your classes, the dopamine of knowing you're going to get a stripe, knowing you're going to get a belt. The dopamine my son has knowing that we're getting ready to play and do that. The second one's oxytocin. This is called the snuggle chemical. Hugs, lots and lots and lots of hugs, pats, high fives to my son, also to your students. When my son has a temper tantrum, because he's 3 years old, he doesn't have an upstairs brain yet, so he's not always going to be able to control his temper. So when he does have those temper tantrums, the first thing that I do is I run over and I pick him up and I hug him and I hold him tight and I sing the Mommy Loves You song. That gets him calmed down and that gets him connected to me. Same thing with your students. If your students are having one of those freak out things, build up their oxytocin, build up that connection. Not saying it's appropriate for a lot of people to hug their students, but physical touch, pat on the back, those types of things. The third one is your serotonin. It's triggered in your gut. That's your satisfaction chemical. That's after you eat. You're like, oh, that felt good. You're rubbing your belly like that. That's the serotonin that's being induced in your brain. And the fourth one is your endorphins. And that's what you get when you're working out, high energy jumping jacks. So my goal is to limit the cortisol in my son's brain and also induce the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin, and endorphins. This is teaching with the brain in mind. So I apologize that I got off track, but I'm going to refer to those a couple of times during this. And if you learn how to utilize these words when you're speaking to parents and telling parents these chemicals, you position yourself as an expert too. And when you position yourself as an expert, that means they're going to stay longer. That means they're going to refer more friends. But it also means that you can charge more for your program because there's a higher value to it. Okay, let's go on to parent skills number 2. Attunement. Be so aware of your child's strengths and weaknesses according to their stage of development so that you know what to expect from them and what not to expect from them. When I do my instructor certification courses, we talk about the stages of development, and we go over physically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially what to expect and what not to expect from students at each particular age group. Your 3 and 4-year-olds, which are your preschoolers. Next stage of development is your kindergarten and first graders, which are your 5 and 6-year-olds. Then your 7, 8, and 9-year-olds. Then your 10 to 14-year-olds. So as a parent, when they're saying, well, give you an example, well, Johnny, he's 3 years old, and he can't sit still, and he just spins around in a circle in class, I don't know what to do with him. Well, that's his stage of development. One of the reasons why 3 and 4-year-olds can't sit still is not because they have high energy and because they don't have good discipline. It's because they don't have core muscle strength. So them sitting with their legs crossed, hands on their knees for 5 seconds, they start to get weak. And then they slowly start to fall over, and then they roll on the ground. It would be like me sitting on the floor and having Brandon sit on my shoulders. Maybe after 1 second, I'd be like, okay, get off. The same concept with 3 and 4-year-olds is their stage of development that their core muscles are not strong, and that's why they're falling over. Same thing with you see the lazy blocks, when they do the high blocks, 3 and 4-year-olds rest their hands right here, and you get very frustrated. It's because their upper body muscles aren't developed yet. So their hands are tired, so they rest it there. Or the times where you have them hold out the punch, and you walk over to Andrew, and you're like, Andrew, put your hand up. And then you look over, and Troy's hand's down. So then you go over to Troy, and you're like, Troy, put your hand up. And you look over, and Andrew's hand's down. And parents are getting frustrated going, yeah, my kid won't even hold his punch out. You can explain, be attuned to their stage of development, understand that this is expected at their age group because they don't have those upper body muscles. That's why we do a lot of crawling. That's why we do a lot of exercises to help them build those muscles. So when parents, again, say, well, he's not paying attention or focusing on his homework at home, well, how old is he? What's expected for his stage of development? If you can be attuned to them, you can be a better parent. I know that my son, when he takes his naps during the day, he has a lot of cortisol in his brain when he wakes up because he has vivid dreams. It's just in his DNA. So when my son wakes up first thing in the morning, he is like the happiest kid in the world. But he takes that 2-hour nap during the day. When he wakes up, I know he's Grumpy Bear. So I'm very attuned to that. So the way I parent is going to be a little bit different. So when parents, again, are saying he's displaying these certain characteristics, ask them, what's your level of attunement with your child? How well do you know your child's strengths and weaknesses according to their stage of development? And ask them, are they 1 or 2? Are they 3? Or are they 4 or 5? Are they very attuned with the parent? You ask a parent that, it's so powerful. Because then they're going to step back and go, wow, maybe I was over-expecting from my kids. Same thing, especially with teenagers, preteens. Anybody here a parent of a preteen or teenager? We've had this concept. You know that preteens and teens, they're going from an adolescent brain to an adult brain. And when they do that, your brain has to shut down. Just like when you're expanding an interstate, you have to shut down certain lanes. Well, the brain is growing into an adult brain, so they have to have a lot of energy to wherever part of the brain is growing. And it starts from the back to the front. Well, the back part is all the analytical stuff. Understanding the Pythagorean theorem, the algebra, all the science and all the facts and things like that. That's why they're so smart. That's why there's a franchise called Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? They're extremely bright when it comes to all these facts. But their prefrontal cortex, which is where they make all their decisions, is under construction because all the energy is focusing on the back part of the brain. So they do stupid things like, why did you jump off the roof into the pool? Why did you glue your sister's Barbie doll onto the wall? Right? They do a lot of dumb things. So then what happens? We treat that preteen teen like they're stupid because they make these bonehead decisions when they're sitting here going, you think I'm stupid? Do my math homework. Which you probably couldn't do. Right? They are smarter than you. They're smarter than everybody in this room except for me. I love telling that joke. So understanding and being attuned with their stage of development can help you understand that, okay, so yes, he made a bonehead choice, but that's because their prefrontal cortex is under construction, and I need to work with my child on it, not against. Okay, let's go on to the next skill. Patience. Oh, boy. This is one that I'm so proud of that I've mastered. I've got this one on a scale of 1 to 5. I'm at a 5. When my son was at a 2, I was at like a -5, though. I didn't have patience with him. When I started studying the parent skills and deploying them with my own son, I'm now extremely patient. Especially I just got a brand new iPhone 10, and we were playing superheroes, and I was trying to videotape him, and he took his Thor hammer and hit my phone and swung it across the floor. Most parents would have been like, why did you do that? Freaking out, yelling at him, and I just stopped for a second, collected myself and explained that these are valuable things and told them that you got to be careful when mommy's holding a phone and mommy has a laptop, because if it breaks, it's expensive to fix and it's less toys for you. So being very patient. So when parents come to you and they say, I just keep losing my cool, right? That's another, raise your hand if you heard a parent say, I lose my cool. You have to say, take a couple extra seconds before you respond. And if you take a couple of extra seconds, it's so, so powerful. So ask the parent, on a scale of 1 to 5, how patient are you when your child makes a mistake? Do you blow off the horn right away? Are you 1 or 2? Or are you 4 or 5 if you mastered the art of patience? I mastered the art of patience when I got attacked on Facebook last week. Boy, did I write some stuff down. And then I deleted it because I deployed patience and said, I'll wait a couple of days before I make my response. And I waited a couple of days and made my response. Made a world of difference in the context and the quality of my post. Okay? Next skill. Prompting. If there's one skill that I recommend you deploy, not only with your children, but also with your students, it's prompting behavior. Too many times, or many times, or most times, parents wait for their child to make a mistake before they teach them a lesson. Shake your hand if you agree. You just wait for him to screw up before you punish him and hold him accountable. How often, though, do we prompt our children to have good behavior? So when we're out, my son does not sit still at restaurants. He is one of those kids where we have to go to certain restaurants because we know that they're patient with our son. Because he's a wiggle worm, he's a social butterfly, he likes to walk around and do all these things. So when my son is sitting still at a restaurant or in a movie theater, I'm prompting him by going, Van, I love how you're sitting right now. I'm so proud of you. When we get home, extra superhero time. So I'm setting him up. I'm catching him when he's behaving good to prompt good behavior. You could do the same thing with your students in class. Everybody have a lot of spinners in class? Kids who just spin around when they're sitting down, right? Those types, and what you normally do, the normal strategy that instructors deploy when they're spinning around is, hey, if you don't stop moving, you got 10 push-ups. Where for me, I'll prompt them instead, and I'll say, okay, I'm gonna count to 5, and when I say 5, I wanna see who could sit faster than Brandon, who is normally the kid who's spinning around in class. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, nope. Look at Brandon. He sat fastest. You guys know what I mean. He was the fastest. So I'm prompting him now to sit good instead of waiting for him to make a mistake. The same thing with parenting is prompting good behavior. So if you can prompt behavior, good behavior, you're teaching them how to make good choices. You're fostering self-discipline. It's such a powerful skill to deploy with your children. So at home now, think about all the misbehaviors your child has and prompt them to make the good behaviors first so that you don't wait for them to make a mistake and then you have to teach them a lesson. Does that make sense? Another thing that we do in prompting, a strategy that we use when we're teaching is we do the hierarchy of intrinsic motivation. So we prompt them to put forth more effort. So when parents say, my child's lazy, he doesn't want to put forth more effort, how are you going to help them? I got this one on pat when I tell parents. We do this thing where we say, okay, everybody, I want you to do 5 push-ups. But if you want to be a black belt, I want you to do 20. But if you want to be a master and you want to impress yourself and you want to show that you're the best that you can possibly be, I want you to do 30. Try it out in class. Watch how many kids do 30 push-ups, pretty much your entire class. You're prompting them to put forth effort. Now that they have that choice and they choose to do it, this is where their self-confidence goes up. Except for one time in class, I always tell this story, Nathan Sanders. Andrew, I think you were there. I'll never forget it. In the core skills class, he did 20 push-ups, and I was like, Nathan, buddy, why didn't you do 30? He's like, I just want to get my black belt, ma'am. I was like, good point, buddy. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Edutaining. You got to make learning fun as a parent. And really quickly backtrack to prompting. So again, when parents say, my child just has so many misbehaviors at home, ask them, how often are you prompting your child at home to have good behavior? On a scale of 1 to 5. Are you at a 1 or 2, which means you never prompt them? Are you at a 4 or are you at a 5? And it's okay if you're at a 1 or 2, because now you know that this is a parent skill that you can start to deploy at home and get better results. Does that make sense? Every single month we do one of these parenting skills for our skills members, and we have assignments, and we have quotes and worksheets, and then they present them to us in their Facebook group, and they're like, wow, now that I have these assignments and I'm scoring myself, I scored myself at the beginning, and then at the end of the month, to see my parent skills goes up, this is powerful. It's very, very, very powerful. Okay, so going on to edutaining. Making learning fun. So remember I said every morning we have a ritual with Van. So instead of fighting Van to teach him how to get ready for school, we go on an adventure. And we always get in a battle on who gets to be the good guy and who gets to be the bad guy. We both always want to be the good guy because the bad guy always wins when we go on these adventures. So I'll say something like, Okay, well, tell you what, if you could put your shorts on all by yourself, then I'll be the bad guy for the rest of the adventure. That's how my son learned how to put his shorts on, making learning fun. Also, engaging him in choices makes it fun, too. So, for example, getting him to brush his teeth was a pain in the butt for a really long time. So I took him to Target, and I said, pick out 3 toothbrushes. Now, granted, he doesn't have just 3 toothbrushes. He's got like over a dozen of them. But he picked them all out. So when it's time to brush his teeth, I say, which toothbrush are you going to brush your teeth with now? So engaging him in those choices makes edutaining fun. My son doesn't like me to read to him. He just thinks it's boring. He'd rather be on his iPad or playing superheroes. So what we had to do is I bought him this really cool big TP tent. And every night at 7:45, we take out his TP tent. We set it up in the middle of his room. I put the lights on. I turn on some really cool music. And we read books. So now I'm making learning fun. So when parents say, my child never wants to do his homework, I'm fighting him to do his homework. How can you make homework fun? You can pitch a tent in the backyard, or in Florida right now if you can. You can't do that up north. But you can create a fort for them to sit in and make it fun. You can switch environments. You can take them to Starbucks if they're a teenager, let them do their homework there, take them to the park, and do things like that. So when parents say, I'm struggling to get my child to study or do his homework or practice at home, say, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you make it edutaining? How edutaining are you when you're trying to help them learn? Are you at a 1 or 2, 3, 4 or 5? I read in one of Denny Strecker, I think it was Denny Strecker's, one of the parent Facebook groups, and the parent replied to this and said, man, my household has changed. It's so much fun now. Homework became fun again. And now we brainstorm how we're going to do our homework tomorrow. Pretty neat. Great parenting skills. And of course, you can deploy the same strategy as a martial arts instructor, making learning fun, deploying things like trickery, on your marks, set, goose, go-kart. That's why we do play-based learning. Lots of games in our class. Okay, next slide. Nurturing. No child is born with a proper sense of good behavior, and just like adults, mistakes are how they learn. So be sure to look at mistakes as opportunities to educate versus punishment. I actually embrace when Van makes a mistake. I embrace when Van drinks his chocolate milk and he doesn't just put it down. It's like he's at a bar and he slams it down, and next thing you know, it falls off the table and chocolate milk goes everywhere. I embrace that. Instead of yelling at him and saying, hey, that's not how you put your cup down, I say, whoa, you just made a mess. Let's go grab some paper towels and let's clean this up and let's practice how we drink and let's practice how we put our cup down. And I'll do it with you and let's see you can put our cup down the softest, right? So I'm nurturing his behavior now instead of trying to look for punishments. So again, when parents say they see these typical misbehaviors in class, you could say, how nurturing are you at home? Do you look at misbehaviors as opportunities to punish, or do you get anxious to punish them? Or when they make a mistake at home, on a scale of 1 to 5, how open-minded are you to teach them a lesson? How open-minded are you not to lose your cool? So I'm at the point now with my son where I don't lose my cool at all, especially when he makes mistakes, because I know that those mistakes, I'm going to help him be the man that he's going to be, the better version of himself, or the best version of himself. Okay, next slide. Adaptability. So again, remember I said when my son wakes up in the morning, he's super happy, but after his nap, he's got a lot of cortisol in his brain. I have to adapt my parenting strategies according to his behaviors at home. Their behavior will change based on their mood, so the best way to parent is to adapt to the best way you possibly can. So when my son is moody and he throws those temper tantrums, I know I want to deploy that dopamine, that oxytocin, that serotonin, those endorphins. I know that when he wakes up from his nap, a lot of times I'll adapt my parenting if he throws a temper tantrum, and we'll go outside and we'll run around and we'll play. And we'll get those endorphins going. So when parents say they're struggling with their kids at home and they say their child is very moody, say, well, when your child is moody, how well do you adapt according to their moods? Do you try to force them to be a certain way all the time, or do you adapt to their mood? And score yourself on the scale of 1 to 5. 1 or 2 means you don't adapt at all as a parent. 3 means you do sometimes, or 4 or 5 is, yes, I'm starting to learn how to adapt. Most of the time when you ask them these things, they're going to be at a 1 or a 2. And that's okay. You want to tell them that that's okay, because now you can deploy these strategies and you're going to become the best parent you possibly can be. Okay, and the final skill? Next slide. Consistency. Yeah, he got it. This one's very important, because not only does your child have moods, but you have moods. We all have moods. When I was getting slammed, of course, I went out on my dock and I sat there for a second. Greg was the one who called me. We had a conversation, and I was almost in tears because I was just so unfair. And then my son got home, and I told Jill what happened. Of course, Jill's hot-headed. It was going off, and I caught myself, and Van wanted something, and next thing you know, Van's like, Mommy, Mommy, Mommy. And normally, or before I understood these parent skills, I would have looked at Van and said, Van, give me a second. Mommy's talking into something important. Well, no. I need to be consistent with Van. I need to be that patient, nurturing, connecting, edutaining, adaptable parent all the time. I need to be consistent with the behavior that I have if I want to foster the best child. So I never, ever, ever manage my child or parent my child based on my mood. I'm consistent all the time. So you have to ask parents, how consistent are you with your good parenting strategies? Do you adapt your parenting based on your mood? Do you lose your temper with your child? A lot of parents do. This is probably where this is the biggest weakness, is that they're not consistent. If they've had a bad day, if they get in a fight with their spouse or their partner or somebody else, typically it carries over to how they parent their child. And if you can deploy the strategy of being consistent, that's where you foster that empathy for your child. That's how you help him build that self-esteem. That's how you help him understand how to have empathy. That's how you teach him how to cope with bullying, right? Bullying's not going away. So instead of trying to get rid of bullying, why don't we teach children how to cope with bullying and adults how to cope with bullying? And one of the ways that you can cope with it is by being consistent in your behaviors regardless of your mood. It's very powerful stuff. So those are the 8 parenting skills. And what I will do is I will make sure, actually, if you're not in my skills tips group, just go, or friend, probably easier just to friend me on Facebook, and I'll send you the 8 parenting skills so that you can practice. And you can even do the theme of the month like what we do. And this month, you just use that in your vocabulary when you're talking to the parents. Because if you can help parents be the best version or the best parent they can be, again, that's where you're going to leave an impact. I'm spending my life's work becoming the best children's martial arts educator as I possibly can be. And I believe that helping parents be the best parent they can be is one of those strategies that will really put our industry to the next level. Absolutely. Yes. All right. So I got some hats to give out if you're paying attention. So Shannon, would you mind handing me those caps? All right. Put your notes away so you don't cheat. Okay, raise your hand. Tell me the first parenting skill. Yes, sir. Connection. Awesome. Come pick a hat out. A pink one. I did save all the Cozumel colors is what I called it. There's the pink one. There's a pink one right there. All right. What's another parenting skill? Yes. Patience. Grab a hat. What's the parenting skill that makes learning fun? Yes. Edutainment. Come on up and get a parent hat. Come get a skills ninja hat. I'm dyslexic, by the way. That was another reason why I got bullied as a child. I'm a lefty. Severely dyslexic. I'll say Tuesday and I mean Thursday. So you really got to be a mind reader. Andrew has mastered the art of reading my mind because I'll say Tuesday and he knows I mean Thursday because of my dyslexia. Okay, another parenting skill. Yes. Adaptability. Great. Come on up and get a hat. What is the parenting skill that you can deploy that I consider the best parenting skill which helps set the student up for success? Yes. Prompting. Excellent job. Who can name all 4 positive neurotransmitters in the brain? Andrew. Nice. Which hat do you want? I know you had your eye on that hat too. You're lucky you got your hand up the fastest. Randy already had a beer, so you saw that coming. Okay, final one. Or no, I have 2 more. What's that negative neurotransmitter that we want to try to limit? Cortisol. Very good.
Left or right?
Okay, final question. What's the last parenting skill? You're so smart. Excellent job. Okay, well, I hope that this made an impact on you. I know it doesn't necessarily talk about numbers and enrolling more students, but I hope that this helps you look at your role in a more positive, more exciting mindset. And I hope that Monday you go back and you deploy these strategies, not just with your own children, with your nieces, with your nephews, and with your students when you're working with them on the mat. And I hope that you sit there and you go, this is really making me love what I do. Because I think the best job in the world, and I give this speech all the time, but the best job in the world is being a parent. I'm in competition with Greg Horton. I don't know if you guys knew this. We're in competition as who has the cutest baby. And I know that Greg Horton is an amazing parent by how many pictures he posts of his parent or of his child on Facebook. And it is the greatest job in the world, being a parent. I think the second greatest job in the world is being a teacher. It's also the most underappreciated job because they don't get paid a lot. But dedicating your life's work to helping people build knowledge to become the better version of themselves is an amazing and rewarding job in itself. And that's why a lot of teachers do it so selflessly. And I think the third greatest job in the world is being an entertainer. People who give their life's work to helping you set aside whatever your worries are, whatever your pains are. Actors, actresses, writers, artists. I always said if I died and come back, there'd be two people I'd want to be. Number one, I'd want to be Pink, because she's just an amazing artist. See her in April, by the way. I mean, that's just great to have that stadium full of people and be able to motivate them. Second one would be Rowan Osborne, because he just lives such a cool lifestyle. As martial arts instructors of children, we're all three. We are parents, we are educators, and we are entertainers. And it is the coolest job in the world. And I tell people that I'm a pediatric ninja specialist. I love when people sit on the plane and go, so what do you do? And I say, I'm a pediatric ninja specialist. And they're like, that's really cool. I used to say, oh, I'm a martial arts instructor. And they go, oh, okay, well, I'm in real estate, right? And they used to blow it off. But saying a pediatric ninja specialist really is exciting. It's such a great job. And when people say, tell me more, you could see it all in my face. And they're like, wow, I'm jealous. I have a lot of friends who are chiropractors, wedding planners, pilots. And when we always get together, we get together a lot. We're getting together on Sunday. And they're always like, you suck. You love your job. You're just so happy. You get to play around in your pajamas all day. Kids call you master. I mean, does it get any better than that? So we are very lucky to be in the career that we can be. I really don't think that there's any other sport or activity that can help children develop themselves as a whole and be the best version of themselves in martial arts. So let's be very thankful and grateful for what we have. That's it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, babe.
Brother?
So when I first started trying to absorb what Miss Shuman is teaching us, the thing that went through my head is the conversations I used to have with parents. I want to make your kid a national champion. You know, here's a trophy. He's got a great spin hook kick. And now when I'm a gold belt possibly in the stuff that she's teaching, but to be able to have a conversation that puts you on the level of a high-level educator, what's worth more if you were going to put your kid in a program after talking to her or talking to my dumb butt up standing there with my trophy about my third place gold belt division in 1983. So this is the direction, and this is part of the growth of our industry. And if we can get to that level, if we can get so that people look at us like Melody Shuman, that we have that level of education, man, that's going to take us everywhere we want to go.